I could not wait to see what Apple would do with the iPad 9, and I just ordered mine in space gray. Let's talk about what's new, what stayed the same, and who should order this device. So the iPad 9 remains Apple's entry-level tablet and its most popular model. This year's goal was to provide more performance and better features while maintaining the price point. There was one thing that they absolutely needed to change, and I'm glad they did. It was no surprise that the first upgrade was the chip, and we're now getting the A13 Bionic chip, which has a CPU, GPU, and neural engine that are 20% more powerful than the ones on the A12. For those who use the iPad for viewing content, for surfing the web, and for basic productivity apps, this may not actually translate into a meaningful difference, but for those of you who play games or edit photos and videos and perform other more demanding tasks or even do a lot of multitasking, this is a nice upgrade. Also, if you're someone who keeps their devices for a long period of time, you always want a little more performance than you may need right now, just so that you have that little bit of headroom for the future. Now, this added performance actually has an impact on other aspects of the iPad. So for example, the camera functionality. On the back, we see an 8 megapixel camera, which is the same as what we saw on the iPad 8, but the newer image signal processor on the A13 contributes to features like better autofocus in low light. Now, I thought they might upgrade this camera to the 12 megapixel one that we see on the iPad Air 4, but they needed to keep the price down, so that might be a reason why they didn't do that. Where we see a significant and what should be a very meaningful change is with the front-facing camera. So on the iPad 8, we had a 1.2 megapixel camera, which just isn't really that great at this point, especially with how many video calls we all need to make for school and work. So the good news is that Apple actually bumped this camera up to a 12 megapixel ultra wide. So again, we're going from 1.2 megapixels to 12 megapixels. We're getting a much wider 122-degree field of view, and most important, we're getting a feature that has only been available on the M1 iPad Pro until now, Center Stage. What this feature does is use the ultra-wide camera and then the neural engine to track the subject as it moves through the frame, and then it zooms in and out to keep them framed properly. And as a viewer, it looks like the camera is actually panning or tilting to follow the speaker, which is really cool. Now, I love this feature because if I'm in the kitchen, I can just put my iPad down and walk away, and then I know that wherever I am, it's going to follow me. So I'm really excited to see that this new feature is going to be available on the entry-level iPad 9. They also said something that I haven't had a chance to test yet, but if it's true, it will make this feature even more useful. So with my iPad Pro, I wasn't able to use Center Stage to record video. So I could use it with FaceTime and I can use it with Zoom, but I couldn't use it just with a basic camera app. Well, they said that you can record and stream. So I'm not sure if this new feature is available with iPadOS 15, but if it's true, you'll be able to use this feature to shoot clips and then use them on TikTok or Instagram Reels, because this feature works both in landscape and portrait mode. So essentially any social platform that would allow you to upload footage from your device would be able to take advantage of this new feature. I think a lot of iPad users who create content just for fun are really gonna love this new feature. And again, it's why I think the front-facing camera upgrade is so important. Now, looking at the overall design of the iPad 9, we aren't really seeing any updates. It's the same size and shape as the iPad 8. We still have the larger bezels on the top and the bottom, and there's still a home button with the previous generation Touch ID. The display is also a non-laminated display like we have on the iPad 8, same size, same resolution, and the same 500 nits of max brightness. I know that some users were hoping for a fully laminated display like we have on the iPad Air 4, Pro, and the Mini 6, and it would make sense to me that this is another area where Apple had to cut back in order to keep the price low. Also, a non-laminated display can be a lot less expensive to replace because most of the time you're only scratching or cracking the cover glass and the display itself is actually still intact. With a fully laminated display, because the cover glass, the touch layer, and the display are fused together, the entire display assembly has to be replaced, which is more expensive. Now, going back to the iPad 8, the only change to the display is that it's now a true tone display. That means that sensors detect the color temperature of the ambient light in the room, and the display can shift the colors so that white always appears white rather than yellow or blue. The nice thing about the design staying the same is that if you're upgrading from an older model that's still the same shape, you should be able to reuse all your accessories. And speaking of accessories, the iPad 9 supports the first generation Apple Pencil. I know some people were hoping for the second generation Apple Pencil, but with this shape, there isn't really a place for it to pair, charge, or store like there is with the squared off edges on the iPad Air 4 and the iPad Pro. It also means that we're still using a Lightning port, so again, your dongles and charging cables will work. Another thing I'm excited about is that the iPad 9 will ship with iPadOS 15 and all the new features. Now, I've had the beta version installed on my 2020 iPad Pro since it was released, and if you watched my favorite features of iPadOS 15, and you heard me talk about the new widget features, quick notes, which is great, all the new multitasking options, and then other features like live text. It's gonna be really cool to have all those features on the iPad 9. Then also for those of you who have existing devices, you'll still be able to upgrade. Apple didn't discuss the battery life on the new iPad 9, but they are reporting the same 10 hours of surfing the web on Wi-Fi that we got on the iPad 8, and the same 9-hour when using cellular data. The one super important change that they made, and I was really hoping that they would, has to do with storage size. So the iPad 8 came with either 32 gigabytes or 128 gigs. I have a dedicated video about this topic, but 32 gigs is really just okay if you're using the iPad for content consumption or if you're only using very small apps. But even with a few larger games, it can quickly fill up. And not to mention that if you shoot photos and videos, then you would definitely run out of storage. Now, the great thing about the iPad 9 is that it starts at 64 gigs for $329, which is the same price as the iPad 8 was with 32 gigs. Or you can upgrade to 256 gigs for $479, and that should give you plenty of storage space long term. Now, one of my favorite things about iPads in general is how long Apple supports older devices. So I still use my iPad Air 2, believe it or not, which I got in 2014, and it's still compatible with iPadOS 15. Now, this is a good reason to get more storage so that you don't end up having to replace a device that works great for you just because you run out of space. In any case, 64 gigs is a much better starting point and would still be a good option for a lot of users. Before I continue, if you're not sure which size to get, I do my best to read as many comments as possible. So if you have any questions about storage size or anything else that you want to make sure that I add to my detailed reviews, please go ahead and drop them in the comment section below. It's going to be really interesting to see how the iPad 9 stacks up against the iPad 8 as far as performance and then as far as real life use. And also, how does it compete with the iPad Air 4 and the new iPad Mini 6, which I'll be getting on the same day. I will, of course, do follow-up videos after I've had a chance to run the iPad 9 through its paces, but I'll make a prediction now about my future recommendation and we'll see if it comes true. My guess is that if you already own the iPad 8, it probably won't make a lot of sense to upgrade for the processing power. So I would only do that if I needed more storage or I wanted the new camera features. And then I would take that added performance as a bonus. If I'm choosing between the two and I don't have an iPad, then I would just get the iPad 9 because I might as well pay a little more for the additional features, performance, and storage. And I'm super excited to see how much of a difference there is between the iPad 9 and the iPad Mini 6, especially with the newer chip and that newer display on the Mini. And if you're interested in learning more about that device, watch this video. If you enjoyed this video, click on my face to subscribe. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.